Hi, this is the first in a short series of videos on Google Forms. Now, I realize that some of you may be very familiar with Google Forms. It's a great tool for collecting information, and we're going to use this as a base really for some more advanced ways to work with Google Sheets. So the two work very, very well together. If you feel like you're very familiar with this content, just watch it at an accelerated speed. I'll have another video that shows you how to do that and how to skip through the video. This can be a very useful technique, not just for these videos, but for any video where you feel like there may be some content in there you want, but that a lot of it you already know. So let's get started with the forms. Okay, we're going to go into your Google Drive. We're going to say New, Google Form, Create and Share. The remainder of this video will look at the basic setup of the forms, of the different types of data you can collect, and when it's appropriate to collect them using particular tools. So to start with, there's a place up at the top for the title of the form. You should always fill that out. And then underneath is an area for description, which just gives the person who's filling it out a little context about what's going on. Okay, to save some time, I'm just going to paste something that I already typed. Now note that you do have some tools here so that you can use, you can bold things, italicize things, underline things to call attention to them. You can create a hyperlink in here if it's appropriate, or make various types of lists, numbered and unnumbered, or ordered and unordered. And this tool is just to strip any formatting that may have come in. So if I copied this out of Microsoft Word or something, it might have come in with some funky formatting, and I can just use that to remove that, which is always a good idea. Okay, let's look now at the type of form elements that are available in Google Forms for you to collect data. You get a default type here, and when you click on it, you're going to see that all your options come up. Right now it says multiple choice, but we may not want it to be multiple choice. Each question has the same type of layout. Okay, you're going to find down here a duplicate button, which we'll look at in a second. You're going to find a trash can, obviously to delete something you no longer want, and you're going to find this slider to make the question required. So if somebody does not fill out a particular question, they would not be allowed to submit the form. In addition, you have this stoplight, these three dots, and there will be different selections in there depending on the question. This is something we're not going to visit at length in this video, but know that this description is here. If you open this up, you can put more information than you would generally put in the title. So that's available in pretty much all the different form elements, but then the other options vary. There are other things on here that will vary depending on the type of form element you're using. So let's switch this over. I can always pull this down, and I'm going to say instead I'm going to pick short answer, and I'm just going to ask people to give me their first name. Always a good idea to collect first name and last name separately, because this allows you to sort them in the data later to get them in, more options for how you order things and look at the data. Okay, I'm not going to put a description on there. It's really not necessary. This is very evident. Here's a good time to use, I am going to make it required, I'm sorry. And then this is a good time, once I've got everything set on here that I think is appropriate, now I can use this duplicate button, because last name is really going to have the same settings as first name. Okay, it doesn't have a description, it is required, it is a short answer. Okay, now if you want to add an additional question, there are several ways to go about it. One is I could simply duplicate this and then change the type if I wanted to. Okay, so I could change it to a paragraph type. The difference between a short answer and a paragraph is the length. Okay, generally first name is going to be 250, short answer is going to be 250 characters or less, although generally it's much less than that. If you want to give people the opportunity for an open-ended response, let's just say comments, then that's appropriate for a paragraph where they can write a lot of information if they choose to. Now, if I did have something like comments, that's when I might take advantage of that description field. Now, of course, we're going to have a lot of questions in between first name, last name, and comments. So let's just imagine that we've collected a lot of information. Now we're going to say, please, if there I'll leave it very open-ended. Okay. Okay, so it's an example of using a description. Now, notice I duplicated it and changed it. That's one approach. Another approach would be simply to click this plus button here to ask a question, and that will allow me to choose the type of question I want to add. So if I click on that now, it just pops up a blank question for me. I'm going to change this one to multiple choice. And I'm going to put school here. Oh, it says short answer. I want multiple choice. Thank you. And then I have different options. So my first option is going to be Hamilton School. Let's change this to Prior School. Okay, so what school were they in before they came here? Hamilton School, Lee School, Grant School, Washington School. These are all schools that would have fed into my current district. Okay, so there's 4 of them. Now, we have to allow, what if there's a student who is coming from out of district? So somebody who's not reasonably going to have been in one of these schools before, then I can simply say add other. Now, adding an option is like adding one of these, but if you add other, what it's going to do is it's going to put the word other. Let's preview this so you can see what it looks like. See, it says other, and if you choose that, it lets you add additional information, which is a really nice feature. Really nice feature. So let me get rid of that. By the way, in order to preview what you're doing to see what it's going to look like, you simply click the eye up here. That will open it up in a new window. Oh, you can see I've got this option 5 that doesn't make any sense that I really didn't want there. So that's easy. You just mouse over it, click the X, and that'll get rid of one of your options. You can also mouse over on the left, and you can grab these and change the order. So let's see if I'm going to go in alphabetical order, G, H, I, J, K, L. Now I'm in alphabetical order. That works. Okay, and now I've got all the options I want. I'm going to require it. If I didn't give them this other option, I probably couldn't have legitimately required it. And I'm also going to add a little description here. Please indicate which school your child attended prior to coming to, we'll pretend that we're in Lincoln School. Okay, since we've got this president's theme going on here. There you go. Okay, so that's an example of a multiple choice. Now, the thing to know about what defines a multiple choice item is that it's a relatively contained list of options, but the user can only pick one. That's when you choose multiple choice. They have to make one selection out of a relatively small group, 5, 6, 4, 2, could be yes or no, something along those lines. Okay. Now, I want comments to be last. I really shouldn't have put comments in here. So one thing I can do is I can take the question click on the question. You'll see up at the top there's going to be these 6 dots, and I can drag it up there and drop it in the order that I want. The other thing that I can do is, instead of having to constantly do this, if you do click on a question, this prior school question, and I create a new question, either through the duplicate or through the plus sign, it's going to go immediately after this. So I don't have to always put them at the bottom and move them around. I can always squeeze one in wherever I want. So in this case, I'm going to pick checkboxes. Now, checkboxes differ from these multiple choice in that you can select more than one option reasonably. Okay, so I'm going to call this student interest. Okay, I definitely want to do a description here. Choose all that apply. And now I'm going to just say interested in sports, music, arts, video games, and I'm not going to put other here actually. I'm going to use this option for other. Okay, so you can put a list as long as you'd want here. Now, something to consider. When you're using checkboxes, we can make this required as we have done with the other fields, but making it required is going to require them to pick at least one. Now, if it's reasonable to think that none of these things would be of interest to the child, then we can't require it, although a way around that would simply be to add something like none as a choice. Then you can require it. The danger there is that somebody's going to pick music, arts, and none, which doesn't make sense, but it can happen. So the design of these things is important, but it doesn't guarantee that you're always going to get logical results. So we should just know that. Okay, next type of question. Let's pull down here. Before we go any further, I want to distinguish something here that's important to think about. These first two, short answer and paragraph, are open-ended. The user provides exactly what they want to provide. If I put a short name for first name and someone included digits in there or punctuation marks in there, they could do that. In writing a paragraph, they provide obviously all of the text. The difference between those and almost everything after that is that the value that you're receiving is predefined. Now, one is not better than the other, but they both have important functions. The short answer and paragraph is necessary when the information you're looking for is very open-ended. When it would be impractical for first name, I can't do a drop-down that has every possible first name in it. Okay, it's got to be open-ended. Anything paragraph style is obviously just leaving it up to the interpretation or the input of the user, so that has to be. The rest of these, I'm determining the choices, and the advantage to that is that I can then count, filter, sort, do all sorts of functions on those other answers because I know what they're going to be. This is especially true for multiple choice, drop down, possibly linear scale. Checkboxes and these grids that we'll look at later tend to have complex enough responses that sometimes are useful. Sometimes you can use that information to segregate data and look at it, but it is more difficult. Okay. Now, next type that we're going to look at is actually the drop-down. Now, the drop-down in my mind functions very, very similar to the multiple choice. Okay, there are some other options you have with the drop-down, but normally the way I distinguish between using a drop-down and a multiple choice is if the number of choices is rather contained, it's rather small, then it makes sense to use a multiple choice because the user can see everything at once. They see it right out there on the page, and it's quicker for them. It's one less click, and there you go. The drop-downs are often used for things where there are a lot of choices, and if you were to actually put them on a page, it becomes inconvenient to have 30 choices running down the page for them to pick through. It makes the form harder to use. So you'll often see drop-downs used for things like state or country or something like that with a lot of options. In this case, we're going to give an example. Here I am going to say appropriate homework. Now this one's going to require a little bit of an explanation. What do you feel is an appropriate amount of time students of I'm not sure that's actually something that I would ask, but let's just use it as an example. What do you feel is an appropriate amount of time to spend each night on homework for students at this grade level? Okay, I'm sure I could have done something better with that, but I didn't. Okay, now option 1, I'm going to say no homework. Option 2 is going to be less than 15 minutes. Now my options are going to start 15 to 30 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes, 45 minutes to 1 hour, up to 1.5 hours, 2 hours or more. Okay, so you see I've got quite a few selections there. When I go over, I'm going to preview this now. I am going to require this as a field. I think that's it. And I'm going to come over to the preview view. See, and I'm going to see that instead of having this long list down the page, this is probably a more convenient or better way to structure this particular question. Again, there's going to be a single response, though there are some adjustments you can make there. I generally use this for a single response kind of answer. Now, by the way, I can leave this tab open. I keep previewing and closing it, but I can keep it open. Just come back to work on my form, and then here, let me, accidentally deleted my last question. Okay, I'm going to add an extra question here. And this time I'm going to come to File Upload. And this would I don't use this too often, but it allows the user to actually upload a file. So it's a way for you to get file from the student. I'm going to continue, and I'm going to say, okay, you have a couple of setting options here. You can allow particular file types. So if I know I'm looking for a picture, I can say I'm looking for an image. I don't want them to put up an audio file or a drawing or a presentation. I prefer to get the image itself and not it like stuck on a PDF or a Word document. So I'll just leave it there. Maximum number of files. I can go let somebody upload up to 10, but I can also restrict it all the way down to 1. So either 1, 5, or 10. And a maximum size of the file. They use up a lot of space. They certainly 10 megabytes for a picture. You can certainly get a picture that's a megabyte or less. If you feel that's going to cause problems for your parents and they're not going to know exactly how to reduce the size of that file, you could leave it at 10, I guess. Now it's saying that this particular form can accept up to 1 gigabyte of files. Okay, so you could change that here in the settings. A gigabyte is an awful lot. I can't see needing to change that very often. I would be conservative about that if you're going to use it. Now, note that I did not, I did not close this tab for preview. If I come over here and I simply hit refresh, it's going to show me what it would look like. So you can keep closing it and opening it every time you want to look at it, or you can leave it open and just remember to hit the refresh key. And then this will work. They'll hit add file, and they'll just get a button to browse, and they can get the computers that the pictures that they want or the files that they want and upload them. Okay, so kind of a nice option. It's not something I use all the time, but when you need it, it's a nice option. Okay, let's come down. We're going to go to click on there so I know my next question is coming below there. Linear scale. This is kind of a fun option. It's where you're asking them to rate something on a scale. So in this case, for lack of a better term, fondness for school. Again, I don't know if I would answer this. And you get to put the two extreme values get to have a label. So in this case, we're going to say loves it, not at all fond. And you can see that this is telling you that they can rate it from 1 to 5, but you don't have to stay with that. In other words, very often I'll set that to 6. And the reason I do that is that when you have an odd number of options, it's very easy for users to fall in that middle and just pick the middle value. Whereas if you give an even number of options, it kind of forces them to shade either slightly positive or slightly negative. So something to consider. I'm going to require that. And I would probably, see, this only has a description. There's not a lot of options you have for this one. Please rate how your child feels about. Again, probably not a question I'm going to ask, but you get the idea that you can use a rating system here. Okay, we're getting down there now. After linear scale, there's something called a multiple choice grid. So it can be really, really useful for certain types of things. Now that said, I can probably set up a series of multiple choice questions that serve the same purpose, but this lets me to do it in a nice condensed area. I think it's easier for you to view. It's easier for your users to fill out. Okay, and the way this works is it allows you to create a grid on 2 axes to receive information. So I'm going to call this one okay, just for the sake of argument. Now the rows obviously are going to go this way. So for row 1, I am just going to pick well, let's just get this up there quick to see how it works, and then we'll edit it. Okay, so again, I can hit the preview, or I can simply come back here and hit the preview. And there you go. So you can see, oh, Google Docs, and I can pick either, it works like regular old buttons. I can only pick one of them, multiple choice, but I can also pick one in the second row. So it's like each of these, each row turns out to be like one of these. Okay, so now I'm going to make it a little better. First of all, I'm really interested in Google Sheets, Google Docs, Google Slides, Google Search, and yeah, what the heck, we'll say Google Forms. Now, how do I want them rated? Well, I'm going to say that you can be an expert, or let's say expert, very good, good, fair, or novice. Well, let's see what that looks like. Okay, so there you go. It's giving you your 5 different rows here and your rating system here. This is nice and clear and easy to understand. Okay, really nice tool. Sometimes I think it's underused, but when you have information that's very closely related, it's really a good choice. There are other things I'm going to make this required, but notice it says require a response in each row. So as I'm filling this out, if I went to submit it, oh, well, all my validation is going to come into play here. So let me fill a couple of things out. Okay. Oh, as a required question, I would have to give them some details. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say they came from this school over here. Okay, let's submit again. Oh, one response per row. So it's stopping me here because I haven't indicated how good they are at slides, search, or forms. Okay, and you can make these choices up top to be anything you want them to be. to allow for appropriate responses. Okay. Now, you have a similar type of tool called a checkbox grid. And in some ways it works the same as the multiple choice, but remember, with checkboxes you can always check more than one, so only certain questions really make sense in that environment. So let's try this. Conference availability. I'm going to turn that on and say description. Please check all that apply to indicate when you might be available to meet. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I'm going to start out by putting in Thursday and Friday. And I'll rethink this a little later. Okay, now I'm going to say early morning meeting, so before 8:30 a.m. I'm going to say 12, not that you should do this, 12 p.m. to 12:30 p.m. after 3 p.m. And then I'm going to put in another couple of options here. Okay, so let's take a look at that and see if that makes any sense. When am I available for a conference? Well, I could be available after 3 p.m. on Monday via Zoom. On Tuesday, I'm not available at all. Let's say, we'll just fill out a couple of things here. So this requires one response per row. So since I've validated it, if I'm not available at all on Friday, I'm not going to be able to submit that form. So we can modify that. We can simply say not available. And now clicking that would get me past that question and get me down to comments. Now, comments really shouldn't be a required question right now. It's kind of just protecting us from submitting the form. Secondly, if I decide later, well, yeah, this is great, but I really only want to have a Friday morning conference, you can't do that in this structure because everything you put for the columns is going to be displayed for every row. So you would either need to do a separate one for Friday that was modified, or if you decided, well, you know, Friday's just not that important, you can just delete Friday from there, and it'll bring you up with this grid. So as I said, a little, you know, it would be nice if you could eliminate some of those boxes per row, but you can't. So if you need to do that, then you just need to make simply another question. Okay, very briefly to finish things up, two other types here. There's a date type, which just basically gives them a calendar to pick for. You would already have this information, but let's say that you didn't, you were going to collect it, student birthday, date, it's required. When they come out to this field on the live form, you see they just get a menu. So they just click over here. Unfortunately, you're going to have to pick a year. You know, it's going to be an actual calendar date, not like the 5th of November or something. And the last option that I'm not even going to spend really too much time with is this time option. It works just like the date option. I don't think I've ever had to use it. I think I've always used some other method of collecting a time. Okay, but it's there, and all it's really going to do is it's going to put things in a time format for you. So I'll just do this so we can see it. You may have a use for it that I've never thought of. See? So now you can just put in, 4:15 or 4:21 p.m. If you needed to collect the time for some reason, that's available to you. Okay, we've been through all of the potential form elements and types of information that you can collect. Know that there's more that you can do with these things. There's options that we didn't cover. We just kind of did the basics. We'll come back to the other later to show you some of the intricacies of how you can use these.